Hey everybody, it's Josh Olive with Haven Comics. It's Thursday night, which means it's time for Shop Talk. So we're going to be talking comics tonight, having a really good time like always. And we have a special guest on from Fargo, North Dakota, which I can safely say is a first for us. So really looking forward to that as well. So if you haven't already done it, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, all that jazz while we play this awesome intro. All right. So that cool intro by Nick Ellis from Two Brothers Comics, great friend of the show. And one quick little piece of business here. It was Nick's birthday yesterday. So what do you think we should do? Because he didn't respond to my messages about his birthday. He didn't respond to your messages about his birthday. I think he's embarrassed about something.
Hey, I got a question before that. Did the intro actually play? Because it just kind of froze up on my side.
It played on my side.
Okay, well, hopefully y'all saw it. Hey,
we can do it again. I like it.
No, we'll do it one more time. We'll see what happens.
We'll do it one more time, and then we'll.
Well, that was time? Yeah, that was weird. Oh, and look, hey, I'm not a big birthday guy. You know what? I sent a text message earlier today also, and it was ignored. So are you ready? Because I'm ready. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Nicholas.
Happy birthday to you.
To you.
And many more.
Where is my thing at?
Nick Ellis.
Boo.
That sounds so much like him. That kills me.
Oh, I will always be happy the day that I found that.
Todd, it's always good to see you, man. All right. So that was our big business we had to take care of, was the man ignoring people who were wishing him a happy birthday. But we have a special guest on. What do you say we go ahead and bring him on?
Let's jump right into it. I love guests.
I do too. They make me really happy. Guys, we have a guest on today. He is the owner of a comic and card shop called Paradox Comics and Cards in Fargo, North Dakota. So he's a good long ways from here. But he is an awesome dude who's been doing comics for a really long time. He's got a great story to tell, and we thought you guys might want to hear it. So we're going to bring him on. Mr. Richard Early. How you doing, sir? Oh,
a cast of thousands.
Where's my applause? I don't get any applause.
That's because you come on first.
Oh, that could be it.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't know me yet. They know you.
Right. Familiarity breeds contempt. Right. So, how you doing, sir?
I was going to ask, is that a Southern tradition to ignore birthday wishes?
No.
Nick is really not big on his birthday for some reason. And then he does tend to hide behind the guise of I'm busy. And we know that he's not, because he works from home. And everybody in this area knows that works from home is a massive lie. So, you know.
Now, Nick, I think mostly Nick just hates to receive presents. He hates gifts. He hates like that feeling where he owes somebody something.
All right, I'll tell you what. When you want to send Nick gifts, I'll get you my address. You can send them to me. I love them.
Oh, well, that's two birds with one stone.
See, yeah. So
that'll make everybody happy.
Yeah.
Well,
thanks for inviting me on. This is awesome.
Well, we've had a few other retailers on in the past. Rick Parman from Nashville. We had Rob Young on from Greenville, South Carolina. Had a few others. But it's something we like to do. We're not the only shop in the world, and we like for other folks to see how other stores do it, hear from other guys what the market is like up in their area, all that kind of stuff. and just see how did you get into this craziness? Because a lot of people, I'm sure you encountered all the time, like, well, I should open up a comic book store. I should open up a comic book store. And I don't want to discourage people from that, but at the same time, they need to know what they're getting into. And check this out. We got a man paying attention now. Red Jack Spade says, Rich, good to see my Fargo people chatting comics with my Alabama people. There you go.
Oh my God, I've known Jack forever. So,
So
aren't we
what
on
you're
tonight
saying
to
is you've
just?
got all the dirt.
Yeah, aren't we on to talk Transformers for the next hour or so? I think.
We certainly could. We certainly could.
You know the interesting thing about comic book retailers is because it took me 20 plus years to realize that that was my community. You know, I serve a community and I work and I work not work for, but with below publishers and distributors or whatever. But it's been really fascinating to make friends with retailers, go to things like Comics Pro, and just realize how many people there are in the same experiences that I'm having. You know what I mean? It made a big difference when I kind of got tapped into the community of retailers.
But the internet made a lot of that possible.
Yep.
The Facebook groups and all that kind of thing. Absolutely. But you're right. When you realize, this weird thing that's happening at my store, like the sales have just plummeted and I can't figure out what's going on, or man, things are really hot right now. And why? And you see that it's not just you and it's happening everywhere else across the country. That is, that helps. You're not the only one in the boat, right?
Absolutely. But you also realize that if you put 4 retailers in a room, you get 6 opinions. So it's hard to get anything done. So and that makes sense because the thing I love about comics retailers is unlike nearly everything else, we are all unique and we're so based around the personality and the hard work and whatever of the owner first, and then those longtime employees after that, and then even the customer community that builds. There's no franchise to it. There's no sameness to it. You can go across town or across the block, and the shop you go to is going to be different than the one you were just in.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that we've always said on this show is, one of the best things about our hobby is the community. So, you may be, as a shop owner, you may be alone on some aspect, but you're never lonely. The community's always around.
Yeah, we've got a great example of that. When we moved locations 5 years ago, a little over 5 years ago, we didn't hire a moving company. We didn't do any of that stuff. The community all came together, and we had 30 plus people all show up to work. And we took everything out of the old location, moved it up to the front to the new location, got everything situated and sorted and all kinds of stuff. And it was amazing to behold. It really was.
That is perfect. Can I have them come to Fargo if I ever move?
Yeah, man. I'm sure they will travel. I've always wanted to go to North Dakota. I've always wanted to go to the Badlands. I've always wanted to hang out with buffalo. That's just something I've wanted to do. Never been able to do it yet. And so I'll come and help you out.
Excellent.
So how'd you get started in this whole mess? How did were you just a kid and you got into comics and you loved it from there? When did you discover comics? How did you get into it? What's the origin story for Richard Early?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a firm believer that for most of us, and a lot of us might deny it, but that what we grew up around tends to be just a huge part of our lives. Even if we shut it out for a long time, at some point we're going to come back to it. And I never shut mine out, but so for me, the biggest thing to know about me physically outside of being a comic shop owner is that I'm blind. I'm blind in my left eye. I was born with congenital glaucoma, lost my sight when I was less than a month old in my left eye because my retina my optic nerve got crushed. So that was fun, apparently, when I was just a month old.
Ow.
Yeah. And so then for most of the rest of my life, the thing that I've done is fought to keep the vision in my right eye. And I had 20/40 vision or better for a long time. And so when I was a little kid, I did all these surgeries at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester. And my poor parents, who were like 20 and 21 when I was born, are just doing the best they can to get me to all these eye surgeries. And I just remember bright, colorful comics being there from a very early age. Spider-Man books. It's kind of funny because I actually had a Amazing Spider-Man 129 when I was 4 or 5 years old. First appearance of Punisher. I obviously completely destroyed that book. And had no idea and colored in it, but it always cracks me up that was one of the books that I had. So,
that Punisher's not a character you associate with the little kids, right?
Right?
They're not making little I Am Punisher books,
There was another one that it's like 176. I should know the issue number, but it's got Nova and Spidey on the cover, and they're tied with these big chains to 2 rockets, and they're going to be shot off at New York to destroy it. And that cover was just I loved that when I was 7. So
what's not to love?
Yeah, but so comics were just kind of always there. And when we moved up to Fargo, North Dakota, and the first that I knew of, the first ever comic specialty shop I ever found was Lantern Comics in downtown Fargo. And I think I was going to Lantern when I was 11, 12 years old, and I was a regular by 14 or 15. And this is right around. I remember collecting the original Secret Wars off the shelf. I remember when Dark Knight Returns, the first issue came out, and our shop owner was telling everybody, you got to buy this, you got to buy this. And at that, for some, I was a Marvel zombie and didn't want to buy Dark Knight Returns #1. So, exciting mistakes on my parts.
I've made some of those too. I would pick a book up and I'd be like, and I'd put it back, and I'd come back the next week and it's still there. I'd pick it up and I really should get this. And I put it back, and I regret it still to this day, 30 years later. Why didn't I pick that book up? I knew I should get it. I just didn't.
Well, here's a great example. I remember Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I don't remember the week #1 came out, but I remember it was just such a phenomenon. And my shop had lots of the third printing, the first one that was the regular comic size, right? Yep. And I picked one of those up, but it was just all the older comic guys were talking about and everything like that. Well, so years later, about 3 years ago, one of those copies from that shelf in his store from when I was a little kid turned up at my store in a huge collection. Wow. And I know it was that one because I know, the guy who sold it to me, the family who ended up selling me the collection, the owner had passed away, and he'd been a friend of mine for my entire life, and so that was really kind of eerie, but also, well, I don't want to say fun. It was not fun because of the circumstances, but neat. I don't know what the right word is.
Well, there's this bit of, it's a melancholy situation, but there's also a little bit of joy to be found in it because something came home, right? Something you recognized, you knew where it came from, and so for that to go full circle and come home, that's gratifying.
And we were able to tell his family, he left that family an incredible gift because he was one of the hoarders, he sold nothing ever. And so between his magic cards and his comics, it paid off his mom's house and paid for his medical bill. So,
wow.
Yeah, it was awesome. So this story back to those days is for Jack Spade, actually. So I remember buying, I think it's issue #4 of when Transformers was a mini series.
Yep. Number 8404 is what it ended up at, right?
Yeah. Well, what's the one, the Spider-Man, Black Suit Spider-Man's on the cover? That's issue 3 or 4 when it was still a mini, right?
Yes. I think it was 4.
I think it was 4 too. And I bought that issue and I brought it up to the counter, and the owner made fun of me for buying it. I'm like 14 or 15 or somewhere right around there. And I got mocked for buying Transformers comics. And to the day, that is one of the formative reasons I opened my own comic shop, right? That's a thing we do, is we push back against the way we got. We didn't go either way, I guess. But, for me, it was like, screw that guy. I don't want to treat people like that, So.
Right. we have. I got a friend. He bought his first comics at my shop, and he bought Power Rangers. I'm not a Power Rangers guy. That was after my time, just not my thing. But he was so excited and so interested in it that I was like, dude, I'm excited for you. I want to see you open this. And I mean, the very first thing he bought was from a local comic shop day. It was that sealed package.
Oh yeah,
from a few years ago. That Lord only knows what it had in it because they were all different, right? And I was excited for him to get it. I said, "Look, I'll give you a discount on it. You just have to open it here so I can see what's in there." And he's like, "You're a weird dude, but okay."
Possibly an exciting Dan Mora cover, probably. I don't know.
Yep. Absolutely. So, when did you open up your shop, and what were the circumstances that led to that?
Yeah, just skip forward to 1993. So I'm wearing my Paradox 30 T-shirt. You can't see it. That says established 1993. I just kind of, I don't know, a friend of mine and I was doing comics, and he was doing non-sports cards, and we just kind of started getting tables together at the local conventions, and I don't know, sort of one of those one thing led to another situations. We were out in Bismarck, North Dakota at a terrible Comic-Con. There was nobody there. And this little old lady bought a comic for me and a set of non-sports cards. I wish I remembered what either one was. And she wanted to write a check. And we looked at each other and she said, "Who do I write it to?" And it was one of each of our things. And we looked at each other and we said Paradox. And because we'd come up with that name out of a thesaurus, we were both like Star Trek: The Next Generation fans and whatnot. And we'd have barbecues at my partner's place. And we came up with that out of just, like browsing a thesaurus one night. And we just said Paradox. So I took a check for $13 to a company that didn't exist from this little old lady. And
that's so cool.
Yeah, right. Like it was pretty fun. And I remember then I took it to my partner was working for, I mean, we have no business license. We have nothing at this point. My partner was working for Schwann's doing delivery. And so I took the check to a local bank and I wanted to open an account, and they said, "We got to have a $50 minimum." And I'm like, "Well, I got this $13 check, and I don't remember if I came up with $37 or if they let me have it, but I like the version where they just took pity on me and let me open it, So
that is awesome. What a way to start. I mean, that's about as propitious a beginning as you can have.
I remember the first show that I ever did through my teenage years, it was my allowance money. And I used to get, I'd skip hot lunch at school and I'd take, hot lunch was like $1.10 or $1.20 or whatever it was, right? But you could get a peanut butter sandwich, a cookie and milk for 50 to 70 cents. So I did that, and I'd keep the difference all week so I could get extra comics on Friday. I mean, I did this for years in junior high and high school. I think my parents know. But so my parents bought all my inventory for me through my formative years. So, it was great when I started doing cons because I had no money into it at all. But I remember I'd bought Magnus Robot Fighter #1 off the stands. I was buying a bunch of those early Valiants. This is one of my early,
they were great.
Yeah. Yep. They were great. But I also just knew that these were going to be money. And I don't even know why. Remember, there's no internet. There's no Wizard magazine. There's nothing. Comics Values Monthly and Overstreet are like our resources, right? Otherwise, it's just go to cons and talk to people is about it for pricing. But I sold that Magnus for like $30, like 2 months later. And damn, I felt good. I just felt like $1 million, and I never felt that way in my life. College sucked for me. Everything, I just never fit because of my eyesight. I was always just a little on the outside, but it was like, oh my God, I'm good at this. Like I identified that book and I sold it, and it was just awesome. I hope everybody has like that moment, where they realize they're good at something.
And you had sunk what, $2.50? I think that was
$2.50 cover price. Yep.
And so to wait 60 days and realize a profit like that, you're not doing bad at all.
Right. So and then the same thing, I ordered my big thing, my big bold first business decision. I pre-ordered through Advanced Comics 5 copies of Star Wars Dark Empire #1. I was just convinced.
What a great book that was.
Yep. I traded a copy. Then it just gets better. So I know I sold multiple of those 3 for $25+ but I traded one. No kidding. I traded one straight up for a box of Marvel Masterworks trading cards.
Oh, nice.
That Series 1. So I made my first business dealing, right? Where I wasn't just taking in cash, I was getting other inventory to open and resell. So, and yeah, the rest is history, I guess. So
I have got a set of those Marvel Masterpieces. The first one, I've got actually 2 sets of them sitting at the house in a binder.
Oh, I said Masterworks. Yeah, no, not Marvel Masterpieces. Yep, yeah, the Joe Jusko cards. Yep,
I've got those too.
Awesome.
I tell you, 1993 was a heck of a time to open a shop. I mean, Image is coming on, Valiant is running strong. You got the Ultraverse about to come in. Cards were doing great. That was a great time to open up a store. In retrospect, now you had some rough years coming right on the heels of that. 96, 97, 98. That was a tough time in the comics industry. How did you guys weather that?
Well, okay. So one last opening story. So I missed. So when Bane breaks Batman's bat, 493, I'm not open, but I'm open by number 500. And so I had kind of learned from the other comic shop owner, even though he yelled at me about Transformers, how to be a showman. He had dressed up as a guy named Captain Duluth and tried to climb the side of a building and got all this press out of that. It was awesome, actually. But I sent out
awesome.
Yeah, he was great.
I would never do that, but that sounds awesome.
So I sent out like press releases about Batman 500. And oh my God, I was on the front page of the local newspaper and guys with cameras were down. My shop was 11 by 11. My comic rack was just this hammered together. They were 1 by 2s for the shelving and just plywood, back painted. It was terrible. It was so bad. I had back issue comics like taped to the walls because that's all I could do. And here's the local news right in the middle of my shop. And we were packed. We had, I bet, 30 people there, which was we weren't prepared for that in any way, shape, or form. But yeah, that was a big mark for me, and really kind of took off from there. So
that's amazing.
You know what? It's just you get lucky. There's so many things, this. I'm sure, right? There are things you have no control over them. That the paper could have just ignored that. I had no control over that being on the front of the forum. And that's just like one of the first times you just get lucky, But behind getting lucky is trying, right? Like if I don't send those press releases, I have no opportunity to get lucky in that situation, right? It just never happens. So you can't control outcomes, but you got to put yourself in those opportunities to just see what happens. So those bad years, I mean, I don't know, I barely survived them. My partnership broke up like 3 years later in 96, and my head was just so far in my own, I don't know, depression that I barely noticed how bad the industry was, other than like the horror that was Heroes World, right? So
oh, what a nightmare.
Yeah, I was fixing to say Heroes World was right around 96, wasn't it?
Yes, I mean definitely, and that was, I mean, it was terrible. It was especially for someone. I mean, in my 3rd year, my partnership's breaking up. I have no idea what I'm doing. I have no money, but I love comics and just managed to, I don't know, fight through. There was a night, like in 1998, there was a night that I called my parents and I told them I was going to close. And I don't even remember why I didn't. So, wow. But and it was about like, I've been open for like 10 years in like 2003 before I hit this moment of, hey, maybe I should start taking this seriously. We had, we caught the Pokemon wave when it started. We were a Magic the Gathering shop as well. And a lot of that card stuff, honestly, is where the money came from more, often more than new comics and so on. So.
Well, they've got a built-in collectible concept in the game. There's a rarity that's built into it, and there's also the whole crack cocaine concept of you got to open the things, and then there's the competition element with the different tournaments and things. So I absolutely get that.
I mean, 2 things are still true in my book, even though the industry is in the state that it's in. I just firmly believe that my business is driven by Marvel Comics and by Magic the Gathering. Those are the two things, and especially with Marvel, I've always believed that as Marvel goes, so goes the industry. If they're in good shape, the industry's in good shape. If they're not, then the industry's not. And I still think that's true to the day, even though things are obviously a lot different right now than they've ever been. Right? So,
Yeah, absolutely. So you weathered the storm that is the late '90s, and that's a tough place, right? But you get into the early 2000s, which is when we opened. We opened in 2001, and the Ultraverse comes online, and that really helps to get interest renewed and all these things. And then CrossGen comes in, and that was awesome. I loved CrossGen. I loved CrossGen so much. Big Ultraverse fan and CrossGen fan, and so I've had my heart broken multiple times there. And Marvel is holding all of those pieces and won't do anything with them. It's so infuriating. Uh, but yeah, so the industry's had a lot of up and down since then, and I know because I've been in it since that point. But so, how do you get to today, 30 years later? What would you say are do you still love comics like you used to love comics? Do you still read them? Because a lot of folks we talk to anymore, they don't read the comics anymore. They're just selling them and kind of keeping track of the trends. I don't get that part myself because I'm still a fan.
Oh, I'm definitely still a fan. My list is sometimes a little smaller than it was. I think I was telling you last night when we were talking about what comics. I said I'm almost embarrassed to say one of my favorite things I'm reading right now is the Star Trek book, the main book by Lansing and Kelly. Those guys remind me of a young, oh my goodness, Annihilation guys.
Oh, Abnett and
Lanning. It just
Lanning, yeah.
Yep, they absolutely get the material they're doing, and they're doing it with complete utter reverence and having so much fun. I love when we see young creators and you can just see that they're on fire and in love with what they're doing. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, I absolutely know it. We had, I don't know how Dead Romans is selling for you, book from Image, but we had the writer and the artist on, Fred Kennedy and Nick Marinkovich. We had them on here a few months ago, and to say, hey, you got this book coming out. Jim Valentino believes in this book. So I actually had hit him up, and he came on our show too, which was really cool. He was an awesome guy to talk to. But those guys are on fire. They are absolutely into the material. They're calling each other up in the middle of the night to talk about what a Roman camp looked like so that he can draw it accurately. Like, he's not just drawing some tents. He wants it to be an actual, honest to God, Roman encampment with the fortifications and the whole 9 yards. And that kind of passion and interest in the material, when I'm reading that comic, I'm poring over every panel because I know that's there. And it's phenomenal. John Rodenbiker's asking, what was Heroes World in the 90s? Sounds like it was bad.
So,
John.
Yeah. John's one of my guys. Hi, John.
Glad when this happened, but Rich owned a comic shop when this happened. So yeah, let him know about Comics World or Heroes World, because that was a nightmare.
Yeah, and John's one of our regulars, so glad he's aboard. In fact, he helped us out on Free Comic Book Day and has many times. So thanks, John. Basically, much like now, fans have heard about the distribution changes that are happening, DC leaving Diamond, all these things. And honestly, it kind of drives me nuts that stuff reaches the fans because it's not something they should have to get frustrated with. That's our problem to get frustrated with. But back in the 90s, Marvel did a very similar thing. They forged their own way. They were going to have their own distributor, but they went with this small regional distributor called Heroes World. And it was just a complete ordering and delivery nightmare. Getting the catalogs ordered correctly, getting what you had ordered, getting the product shipped, especially shipping. Things were just not on time. And it was one of the worst experiences that anybody had ever had in the retail community. and just caused it caused so much pain they had to give up on it and go crawling to Diamond
Well, the
to
other
join
element of
DC
that
there.
was
So
they said we're going to just distribute exclusively through our own distributor. That way we have the
Yep.
entire pie, right?
Yep.
And so what they didn't foresee, they should have, but didn't, was everybody else said, well, fine, we're going to go exclusive somewhere else.
Yep, they caused the demise of Capital Comics and all that because DC did a deal with Diamond exclusively, and then ultimately Marvel had to end up over there as well. But yeah, it completely fractured and changed the way comics were sold, maybe in a way that we're not even seeing right now, right? Like it changed everything.
Well, part of because I was actually co-owner in a store at that time with two other guys, which was a massive mistake to begin with. But
for them or for you,
the way that it was done, and at the time, because the comics industry was actually in the process of taking a downturn at that time.
Yep.
Between Heroes World and the downturn, and then the fact that there were a lot of shops that the only thing that was keeping their head above water was Magic cards. Yep. And when you started going through all those pain, my personal opinion, Heroes was the downfall of several smaller shops across the board. They just couldn't do it anymore.
And, yeah, I mean, we went from something like 6,000 shops down to maybe as low as 2,000 at one point, I think, are the numbers.
Yep. And there's about 3,000 now.
Yeah, and you look at this is sort of tangential, but I was thinking about look at what happened this last weekend to the movie industry, and the movie industry's had a horrible summer, flop after flop after flop. But we get this gigantic zeitgeist where everybody's got to go do Barbenheimer, and the cultural wave, and you can't manufacture that. You don't know that's going to happen again. It's the idea of getting lucky, right? It just happened. But I think that I wish we could see that in our shops. I'm a guy I always advocate for when retailers are talking or publishers are talking. I don't want to sell 2 more copies of something. I want to sell 200 more copies of something. That's what because I love comics. I want them in people's hands. I mean, I sell comics too. I'd love to sell 200, but I want it because of how much I love the medium and believe in it. And I don't like things where we're spending all our time trying to sell 20,000 copies instead of 18,000 copies and not trying to figure out how to sell 2 million copies. This just drives me nuts.
But right. And the other thing is they cannibalize the existing readership, right? It's like, well, we're just going to market to people who are already buying. Like, market to people who have never set foot in a comic book store. Bring in new readers. That's what it's about. Don't just cannibalize everybody.
I don't know how it's selling there, but we do have I think 4 getting ready for the 5th issue of a book right now that's only going to be a 10-issue series. And when you read it, you realize that no one is a legitimate event. I mean, this is an event book. This is a major story that's being told, but it just seems like people aren't jumping on it for some reason. And in my personal opinion, it will be one of those books that people look back on and say, I wish I'd have jumped in on that when I could have. Because it's just been that good in the way that it's been done.
Yeah, Kyle Higgins is doing a killer job on the book No One. What a great book. I want to address a quick question here from Daniel Major. Daniel, it's less a question, more of an observation. We do find a lot of passion in the indie books now. There's no lie. That's absolutely true. Still a big fan of the big 2, but the nuggets are harder to find in the big 2 for me right now. I wish they were all bright and shiny and I could just point to any of them and go, well, that's amazing and that's amazing and that's amazing. But right now, it's really the lower tier books are the ones that are amazing. Moon Knight right now has, from day one of this particular run of Moon Knight, has been excellent. City of the Dead that just came out, Moon Knight City of the Dead #1 was excellent. Fantastic Four right now. Ryan North is killing it with that book. He absolutely has got what the Fantastic Four should be, and he's writing them that way, and it's excellent. Miles Morales is the best Spider-Man book out there right now, and that breaks my heart to say because I love Peter Parker. I love Amazing Spider-Man. But Miles Morales feels more like a Spider-Man comic than anything that's got Peter Parker in it right now. And I hate to say it, but it's how I feel. Uh, and on the other side, over at DC, Tom Taylor is just absolutely slaying it with Nightwing. Titans is great. Chip Zdarsky is doing a killer job on Batman. There's a lot of books. The Dawn of DC stuff. I hate that it's being interrupted by Night Terrors, but the Dawn of DC stuff has really started to get some momentum because they're figuring out that they should go back to just good character focused storytelling, not just random 6-issue arcs and going, aha, but we did a thing and we put out a trade. Like they act like the trade is the ultimate goal and not the story. I'll get off my soapbox now. But yeah, we're still finding a lot of joy in the big two, but it's harder to find wherein it seems like it should be so easy because they should be the books that are front and center, but they're not.
Well, and I don't know how the independent books sell in North Dakota, but when you literally look at the big two and then you turn around and see the caliber of stories that a company like AWA is putting out, honestly, the caliber of stories that AWA is doing is shutting the big two down.
I actually have a bone to pick with you about that, Alan.
What?
I had somebody come in the shop yesterday. They're like, I don't know what I want, but I want something that's awesome and has these characteristics. And I said, okay, what you want is a book from AWA.
Mm-hmm.
And I started telling them about Red Zone. We're sold out of the freaking trade on Red Zone, so I've got to order more of those.
That's a good problem to have.
It's a great problem, but I didn't have it yesterday, and I thought I did.
Yeah, but I mean, like he said, Red Zone alone, that 4-issue title is pretty much shutting down 90% of the stuff that the big two are doing.
Well, I laughed. Saga to the day. I believe I have more. Saga is still my most subscribed title, and it always makes me laugh. I'm subscribed more sagas than Batman, Spider-Man, X-Men. Things like that. But I think you guys are right about all this stuff. But the thing that's happened to the big two companies is the same thing that's happened to every large, long-standing media, brand in the world. Look at what's going on in Hollywood right now. Look at all these things that are happening, right? We are, and especially because the big two are parts of these big corporations. And so imagine being, I grew up in the 1970s, and I had 3 TV stations. I had NBC, ABC, CBS. So, of course, whatever was on those 3 stations was the entire world because it was all that we had to watch. Can you imagine if that was the world today? You can go to YouTube right now and watch literally anything that you want to watch for absolute free. And that's the state that the comics are in. And the great thing, it's incredible. We have democratized the creation of content in a way that has never happened before in the history of the world. But the problem is if you're Marvel and DC and you used to have the monopoly on the content, what do you do now when every fan who likes any weird oddball, there's 3 of us in the world who like it, has a channel for it on YouTube or has a place to get a self-published comic for it, right? So it's got to be really, really hard to be in the publishing offices.
You're right about that.
But on the other hand, what you guys are saying is the result. We are getting comics. These comics couldn't have been made. Comic upon comic upon comic could not have existed even when, and I love Diamond. I'm actually a Diamond guy, and we can argue about that if you want. But Diamond was a gatekeeper to the industry, and that's gone because of Kickstarter, because of webcomics, because of all these places that will publish their books, because of being able to publish a graphic novel, self-publishing on Amazon. It doesn't matter. It just goes on and on and on. Having your own YouTube channel where you draw and put up your own comic, it doesn't matter, right? The gate is open, and that part of it is absolutely fantastic. But like in the movies, it's harder than ever for something to pierce through. And when it does, you get, last year it was Top Gun Maverick, or it was Spider-Man No Way Home. But then this summer, you've got, Flash as a complete bomb and so on and so forth. And then you get Barbie, right? Like, it's just so crazy what it takes for something to pierce all that noise and to galvanize people together, to do the same thing, right? So, sorry, long-winded.
No, actually, to your point, though, because you've got a really good observation here. One of the things, I think this would have been during your time period, if I'm remembering my years right. Um, Maybe not, but the death of Superman.
Right before I opened, I was working at the other shop. But yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
but Death of Superman. It was called The Death of Superman.
Yeah.
Spoilers.
Yep.
That's what the whole thing was called. That's how it was marketed to the entire world. And what happened as a result of that? Everybody came out and bought it. Everybody. People who hadn't read a comic in years. People who had never picked one up. They heard about it. They thought, wow, Superman, they're going to kill Superman. I got to see how that goes down. Everybody came and bought that book. Today, right now, in the latest issue of Marvel's previews, they have issue number 3 months in a row, of a book called Classified, written by TBD, art by TBD. All we know about it is that it says to title TBD. We don't know what the book is called. All we know is it says Classified number 3 of 4. Nobody, how can anybody order that? Nobody knows what it is. Nobody is excited about not knowing what it is. It's terrible marketing. There's terrible decisions being made. You can tell people what the story is. Everybody knew what the story was for Top Gun. This latest movie, Maverick. Everybody knew what the story was going to be. You went to see it because you wanted to see that story. Not because, oh, there's a big secret surprise.
Yeah,
Tell
I
people
agree.
what it is. They will come to get it if they're excited about it.
Yep. I think a good example recently is well, okay, this is weird because this actually isn't. This is not. I'm not going to use that example. We'll talk about that later. Sorry, I was going to talk about Void Rivals #1, and but to your point though, even though because Void Rivals was kept a secret till the last second, so I'm not giving a good example. But I guess my case in point is it was one of my best selling books of the year because a little energy and excitement was put into it by keeping the secret. So it's sort of the same thing as what you're saying. I guess I'm saying it was a clever, really well executed marketing decision that ended up paying off, I think for most of us really well, and fans got something exciting and surprising. So different than Death of Superman. Because I agree with you, and so I apologize for my example being weird.
No,
but my
actually,
point
it's
is
a good example because he did
Yep.
tell retailers.
Yes, correct. Yes.
He told us in advance, so we knew that it was exciting, and we could tell people, you're going to want to read this book.
Yep.
And if you've built that kind of community where you have a rapport with the people who are shopping there, and you can, if they trust you, if you haven't oversold books to them over the years, right? No, you're going to love it. And I hated it. If you've got that kind of rapport where they trust you and you say you're going to want to read this book and you get excited about it, then you can have a secret like that. But you have to let somebody else in on it, because if it's just a total surprise, it's not going to work. Because nobody would have ordered enough, right? Nobody would have ordered enough. But I will say
the good
this.
recent example is Amazing Spider-Man 26.
Oh, Lord, yes.
Tease death. Waits until after our orders are in, and then Entertainment Weekly gets a story with who dies. I mean, how did that benefit literally anyone from fans to retailers to Marvel? It didn't,
No, and I wish that they understood that, but they clearly don't, because that's the pattern that they have developed, and that's what they do. But I will say this about Void Rivals. That's currently our most subscribed book at the store. Void Rivals is several percentage points higher than Batman. It's double our Spider-Man readership right now. Void Rivals is our most subscribed book, and the numbers keep going up every week.
Yeah, and it's exciting. If you are a sci-fi fan, if you like action figures, if you like the cool big blockbuster movies, it's like being at the very ground floor. I remember when I was a kid, one of the books I was most excited about in my life was the early issues of the Micronauts, and that's the kind of feel it's got for me. I don't whether you think it's the greatest book ever, it doesn't matter. It's the beginning of something. We got something new, and we got it from someone we trusted, and we got it in a fun way. So,
absolutely.
Have y'all read issue 2 yet of Void Rivals?
Yes,
I've been on vacation. I'm behind.
Okay, so issue 2 is friggin' awesome. I mean, they've set everything up perfectly in issue 2. You know, issue 1 we get an introduction, we get a cool cameo and everything, but issue 2 was, my personal opinion, Sir Kirkman's best writing. I mean, it was just, I felt like it was that good.
And you
So,
know
I
what
mean,
you guys are going to order more of than you have of just about anything is Transformers #1 in October, whatever, you know, like it's just going to be huge. It's going to, and it's funny because let's face it, Transformers is a very old franchise that kind of started this whole conversation with me talking about getting yelled at for buying it. But it's been completely reinvigorated in the comics medium by by the way this was done. And being handled by who it's being handled by. It's crazy.
Well, see, I think you're right. I think Transformers is going to go. It's going to sell a lot better than it has for us historically.
Yep.
But I told you the other day, GI Joe is my crack cocaine, right? You can tell by looking behind me.
Yeah.
GI Joe is my jam. And we have a big readership for GI Joe at the store. So the thing that we were most we were griping and grousing forever when issue 300 came out, and it didn't wrap things up, and it ended up with a little box at the end like "the end?" ? And we're like, "What are you doing? No, you can't do this to me." So we
you and I
have
sat
been,
there flat out mad.
yeah, we have been itching for GI Joe 301 to come back, and at the round table with Robert Kirkman, that had not been addressed at that point. So I specifically asked him about that. I said,
It was
"Hey, man,"
okay at best, Nick.
I said, "You please tell me that he's going to continue the story." And he didn't say it outright, but he's like, "Yeah, absolutely. I have a lot of respect for Larry Hama, and I want to see where it goes." So I'm very curious about that. But yeah, Transformers is going to be huge. GI Joe is going to be huge. People are so excited to get back to it. And I think I will say this: I've never been a fan of the GI Joe Transformers crossovers. That they just don't work well together to me. So on the one hand, I'm very gratified that Larry Hama's picking up GI Joe and continuing to run with it. This Duke and Cobra Commander series that are coming out, where they explore the discovery of Energon and the Transformers and Decepticons and all that. I kind of enjoy that as a bit of a retcon, but it makes me nervous. I'm like, I don't mix them up too much. I can stand them being beside each other on the plate, but I don't want them all under the same icing. So we'll see what happens, but I'm excited about it, and I'm loving Void Rivals.
I think the other thing that the more I think about this book, the more I'm excited about it and wish I had ordered more. But there was so much this distillery company.
Yes.
I'm kind of excited about this. And if you think back about 2 years, when everybody left for Substack, you know, Scott Snyder, all these people left for Substack. I think one of the things that we've been missing is some of the creator-owned. The range of creator-owned is awesome, but those big names that were driving our sales have been absent in many ways. I mean, I know Snyder's got the books being printed at Dark Horse and so on and so forth, but I think this idea that it reminds me. Imagine back in 1993 if there had been an Image Zero where the first 3 pages or 8 pages of all of the core creators' books were in there. If it was a book that had Jim Lee, Todd McFarlane, and I'm not saying Distillery Zero is exactly that, but that's what it feels like. And I'm kind of excited about this thing. I wish it wasn't oversized. There's all kinds of things that I wish they weren't necessarily doing.
I'm with you on that.
But what we all want as fans, is good books by good creators, and I'm just optimistic and excited that these guys. Jock owns 3% of the company and is the first book coming out. You know, things like that. I don't know. I'm kind of fired up for that thing.
I'm interested in it. I'm curious to see how it goes. It's kind of weird. The names that are associated with Distillery are all big. They're all recognizable names, but they're not like blow the doors off kind of names like Todd McFarlane, Jim Lee, Mark Silvestri. All those guys were back at the time. So I look at it and I go, are they enough? Do they have enough juice to draw the big wide interest from a lot of people? And I don't know. But I'm curious to see how they come out and what they're like. Absolutely.
Like, I'm a huge Jock fan, so whenever he does a book, even that the One Dark Knight
Yep.
Batman story, I thought it was great. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I didn't sell a lot of it, but I really enjoyed reading it.
So here's a question for you, with a tie between all these things. Mark Silvestri's Batman Joker Deadly Duo. How did that sell for you?
Very well. We went out of our way to stock heavily and keep issues for the entire miniseries. Did extremely well.
Wasn't that fantastic? Did
Yeah.
you enjoy that? I enjoyed the heck out of that. We were both blown away by that book.
Yep, and I remember Nancy Spears from DC. She never comments on Facebook, and she chimed in and said that Mark Silvestri was doing the work of his life. And it was I didn't believe it. Someone who's been in the industry forever and see Mark Silvestri starting and stopping a million times. I just thought, oh, he's going to do what he always does, drop out 4 pages. But yeah, no, it was a ton of fun. So, and what an easy thing. Fun, exciting book to introduce to people if they're coming back to comics or they've been around for a while or read Batman. It's like, hey, what if something so bad was out there that Batman and the Joker had to team up? I mean, what an easy premise, right?
Yep. And the fact that he was able to incorporate both of them into the story the way he did and actually force them to be a team.
Right.
The whole train conundrum, right, where the train is rocketing down the rails and you have to drop X amount of weight or everybody dies. And
Yep.
Joker's like, let's just throw off the fat people. And Batman's trying to find everything else. But when you get to the end, you discover they barely came in under the wire, and Joker did throw off 6 of the fat people. It took both of them for it to work, right? And it was just the thought process of, will that ever happen? And then I thought that the new, I don't want to really call her a villain, but the new antagonist that was introduced in that book, I thought she was awesome, and I'm hoping to see more stuff from her. Really,
Especially
really
the
excited.
way they left her at the end of it.
Yeah.
Kind of
on
like
the
that
flip
new
side,
suit.
on the flip side, I know it was a one shot, but Batman Spawn didn't perform the same way that Batman Joker did.
I still have a lot of copies of that to prove it.
Yeah, I have a lot. Yeah, so, but it's interesting. Why? Why did the one? And we wanted to have. We were big on both because we wanted to have a lot of that stuff on the walls on Free Comic Book Day. We had Chris Claremont in the shop, and so we thought we'd get a lot of older fans, and we really wanted to make sure and have all those Batman Spawn covers and all the issues of Batman Joker, all that stuff on the shelf. And Batman Spawn just is. It's like it didn't resonate for some reason the same way. So,
and it was a really good book, so I don't understand why. I mean, I really enjoyed it.
I think if Todd McFarlane done the art, it would have.
Yeah, it was still Greg Capullo. I mean, you're probably right, but it's not like it was a slouch. But I can't disagree with you. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, he's an incredible artist, but he's always going to labor in the shadows of Todd McFarlane because that's what he did. He said, I can do your style-ish. And he did that forever. And so he became the other Spawn artist, but he's never been Todd McFarlane. Now, I love Greg Capullo's art. He's great, and he's capable of doing a lot, but I think he just kind of got buried in there. And so you see him on a Spawn book, you're like, well, that's just what he's supposed to be doing. You don't get excited like Todd McFarlane is back and drawing Spawn. I think that would have changed everything.
Thinking about Batman Joker makes me think of like when I said I hate that fans hear about all the distribution problems because great books still come out. Even though there's problems, you listed a ton of them, and then there's that book. Fans can still find all kinds of exciting stuff, even if the business side of things is going through interesting times. And that's what we try to focus on most is keep that out of their sight and show them good books. And it sounds like you guys, like you're a G.I. Joe fanatic. That's the thing that makes the shops unique is I think another joke I made with you is one of my employees is turning us into the damn them all capital of North America. That's his book that he champions. And so tons of copies of the singles and always it's like the first thing he recommends when somebody comes in, so on and so forth. And I love it. Great. I encourage the heck out of that. So
absolutely. Yeah.
Now,
everybody should have a few go-tos.
As far as your customer base is concerned at your shop, what do you sell? What do you see a lot of selling? What are your fans? I mean, what are your fans? What are your customers like? Really on fire for lack of a better way to put it.
I wish I could. I mean, I wish I had a great answer on the on fire for. There is that. There is that. I mean, we all kind of feel some of that going through the motions element of things. And again, I really think that so much of what's happening has to do with the greater issues going on. Again, especially you talked the big two with Hollywood and the Hollywood strikes and the streaming service problems. It's just it everything just kind of has a stuck in the mud element to it. That said, yeah, I mean, you can get people fired up for Avoid Rivals, but it really takes a lot for that to happen. We talk about a lot how I think there are Star Wars books. Heck, there are X-Men books that we're subscriber only on right now. Marvel overall is still our number one selling company, but it's crazy to me that it's like, why aren't we putting Darth Vader on the shelf? Well, we don't sell any copies of Darth Vader off the shelf. And it's just such a weird time. It's just, I don't know. It's really hard for me to answer that. I'd say independent books mostly are what get people more excited than not most of the time right now. So maybe at Marvel, I thought Ultimate Invasion #1 actually did pretty well for us.
Yep.
Given the price point, given all the things about it, it sold well. I mean, people like what they're used to. They remember when Grant Morrison said X-Men can not only be the best-selling comic, it can also be the best comic. I think that really sums up what people go for. We love independent titles, and oftentimes they're our favorites. But as a retailer, when a great creator has a great run on a big character, those are going to be your best. I mean, just Hush, right? Hush is the number one example. Hush was my DC rep who used to phone call, said it's printing money, and he was completely right. So,
yeah, you're absolutely right about that. You bring up a good point though with a good book, a good selling book can be a good book. And right now, I think we're kind of in a place where books that should be the cream of the crop, they should be the flagship titles, Amazing Spider-Man, X-Men. Our numbers on Amazing Spider-Man have plummeted. They're continuing to plummet. X-Men, we have quite a few books that are subscriber only.
yep.
In the X-Men, and it didn't help any when the months of July and August they're releasing 12 new X-Men focused limited series. I mean, they're already saturating the market with titles, and then they issue 12 more series. It's like, who can keep up with this? Who wants to keep up with this? Why is editorial approving this? Back in the day, you had to order everything Marvel put out, and now you don't. And nobody's asking for it. Like, hey, did you get that book? No, we sure didn't. But I will say, again, there are books that I feel like they are considered to be second-tier characters, third-tier characters, that they're putting out really good books for. The Scarlet Witch book right now that they're putting out is really good. Fantastic Four had that hiatus where they were just gone from comics because of the dispute with Fox, right? And then they came back and they did okay, and they continued to do okay. But now in the Ryan North series, they're doing great. Miles Morales is selling really well. Not selling particularly well, but it's selling well. There's a lot of good stuff happening in there, but it's not with what should be the flagship titles. And that one I think is just really interesting.
So here's a good one.
Oh,
what
go
do
ahead.
y'all think? I'm sorry. What do y'all think about this coming out? I mean, this was kind of just announced here recently. I mean,
it's in the current previews, yeah.
I mean, do we see potential in it? I mean, but I literally have two shop owners at my disposal, so I've got basically two different markets at my disposal right now. So, as shop owners, what do both of y'all like? As a consumer, I'm intrigued. I want to see what they're going to do with it. But as a shop owner, how do you gauge just based off of this right here?
Go ahead, Josh.
Well, I can tell you we put together our sign-up sheet for this, all of this month's previews books, right? And that sheet, before I had even finished printing it off, I already had half a dozen folks subscribe to it. They were calling, they were coming in, they were asking about it. And so before I even finished printing off the sheet, I already had half a dozen folks subscribe to it. Um, I think that one is just goofy enough, and it's finding that sweet spot, right? It's this bizarre premise of things that should never be together, but here they are, and how are people going to respond to it? And I think that particular one is just goofy enough a pairing, but just intriguing enough that we've got people wanting to read it.
Yeah, I don't. That's cool. I'm glad you do that sheet. We don't do that, but I agree. I mean, I think I don't know. My brother-in-law texted me before I even knew it was a thing, and already said I'm getting this on my list. So
Yeah, I'll tell you, Richard. My shop, if you were to take the computer out of it, I could be up and running again in a couple of hours, and you would never know because my shop is exactly like a store from 1983. Um, I print out a sign up sheet and I put it on the front counter. It's right there taped to the counter for everybody to come in and sign up. But we don't have a POS system. We have nothing. We have a computer that we do our inventory or our subscriber list and things. But I could go back to a notebook, an old 3-ring binder in a heartbeat, just like how we used to do it back in the day. Wouldn't hurt my feelings a bit.
The other shop in my town still does that. They use note cards because I've seen them. People bring them. People get mad and they'll bring them in because they missed something. And not necessarily. And I don't think it's just because they use a note card. I don't mean that at all. But it's just always funny when you see them. So.
But yeah, do you? I guess you see a book like this, you get a phone call or two. Do you say, kind of like the politicians do, if they try to take a like we got 10 calls about this from some constituents. Therefore, we think 1,000 people are interested because only this percentage of people who really care are going to call. So you get phone calls. Hey, I want this Justice League Godzilla Kong book. Do you say, okay, I've had a few people expressing interest here, so I think that's going to extrapolate to X number of people who want to read it?
For me, there's just no science to it. I mean, I've done this for so many years, 30 years, and there's still just not a science. I'm sure there are guys all over the country who've got spreadsheets and they've got their predictive models and all that kind of jazz, and I have no idea. It's often, is it exciting to me? Because it's probably exciting to other people, but you got to be a little careful with that to not make it so that you are running the shop. You obviously want your readers to basically be running the shop, right? Do I think that looks cool though? Yes, absolutely. Am I going to take a chance? Of course, because it is goofy and fun and kind of, you're right. Like I kind of felt the same thing about. I know it's not exactly the same, but I thought it was cool when they announced Wolverine Predator, honestly. I just thought that felt like it was kind of in a sweet spot that people would go for,
See, and I got more excited when Godzilla Here There Be Dragons come out. I mean, Godzilla versus pirates. What's not to love about that? I mean, you got to read that.
Yep.
I'm with you on the Predator versus Wolverine, though. I haven't really been interested in Wolverine in a while. Just I got oversaturated on the X-Men books in general. But this particular book, I can see the story unfolding in my head, right? Because you see this as a story taking place over decades.
Yep.
Predator in the woods in Canada meets this crazy naked feral man. It kills him, but yet he comes back. Whatever, or he wins, and the guy sends. Then the next thing is somebody else comes to challenge the crazy naked feral guy, and so you get him through the decades. I could see it being a really interesting story, a kind of no holds barred kind of story, and I'm really interested to see where it goes. I'm absolutely with you on that.
It just feels like it's in the right place because people love Wolverine and there's a huge fan base for Predator, and just matchups like that are kind of neat. And it's not, part 75 of this month's Krakoa story. So you can pick up and read a cool So I asked. So sorry, that reminds me, I asked Chris Claremont. I only asked him 2 questions because I just wanted him talking to fans. But my first question I asked him was about what he thought of the Grant Morrison X-Men stuff. I was just super curious. But then we talked about.
Well, what did he say? You got to tell me.
He said he really liked it, but it wasn't what he would have done, and then went off about that. So,
fair enough.
Which was an awesome answer. I love that he liked it. Right, he read it all and he liked it. And he was writing Extreme at the time, so he talked a lot about that and how they coexisted, but they were so different. Right. But the Krakoa era, he said, Hickman's got great ideas. These are great, grand ideas. Although then he would nitpick a bunch of them. But he said, he was getting, he wanted to read Kitty Pryde stuff. Loves Kitty Pryde still. Wanted to read Kitty Pryde. So he was getting the Marauders book. And so he reads some issue of the Marauders. And there's a cliffhanger, and the next issue of Marauders comes up, and it has absolutely nothing to do with where it left off. And he called his editor or somebody at Marvel and tried to figure it out. And it happened, the resolution was he called it 6 books sideways from the issue that he'd read, right? And so just said that it just was so inaccessible in that way. John Rodenbiker, funny enough, is one of our guys who reads every X-Men comic, and I love that he does it, and I feel like he's the guy that I can go to and find out what is going on in all those storylines right now. But there you go.
Somebody has to be able to answer those questions, and it can't be me. I can't keep a hold of it.
Yeah,
So here's a question for you. Nick wants to know, how do you sell a lot of manga or omnibuses or anything like that?
Both. Yeah. The manga section is the biggest thing that grew in our graphic novel section in the last year and a half. And I had quit ordering omnibuy for quite a while, a lot because of, frankly, because of the price points and the conflict of those price points with Amazon, not to even make an issue of that. But we started up again because we kind of realized, you know what? They're cool. They're cool. They look cool on the shelf. And from a business perspective, it's I can sell 100 manga and make $1,000, or I can sell, 10 omnibuy and make, you know what I mean? Make that same $1,000. We just wanted those bigger things on the shelf, and they are awesome. I mean, they're so much fun. We don't get every one. We can be pretty choosy, but we sell a lot of omnibuy. Yeah. So how about you guys?
No. We don't sell many at all. We have one guy, the guy who asked the question, who really gets them on a regular basis. But outside of that, it's just we don't have much demand for it. We don't have a lot of people asking for it, and we hardly sell any manga at all. We had a bad experience with manga in the early days of the shop. We had a lot of people order it, and we stocked it on the shelves, and then they never came and got it. And it just became kind of a cultural thing for us for a long time of the people who read this or order this don't actually buy it.
Sure.
And now that's clearly not true for the vast majority of people and places, but that was our experience at that time.
Yep.
And it kind of put a bad taste in our mouths. And then stylistically, you talk about something that I'm not passionate about. I've never cared for that art style over much. I loved what was it called? It's the dumbest thing in the world that I can't remember that. Voltron. I loved Voltron when I was a kid. Right? Absolutely. G-Force, thought that was great. But you get up and you read Golga 13 and some of these other things, and okay, but I never really got into the manga a whole lot. So I don't have the knowledge base of it. I don't have the passion for it. And then we had that bad experience. So it was just something we never really carried much of. But certainly over the past several years, we have people who want it, and so we order it for them. But we do not have a manga section at the store.
Yeah, we've grown. Our manga section has grown tremendously. In fact, we're debating all winter because I want to get more graphic novel shelves into the shop, and so we realized the only way you can do that is to go up, to add more shelves up rather than there's only so much floor space, right?
Right.
But yeah, manga has been the biggest growth, and I think here's the thing. You do have to have a champion for whatever you're going to succeed at. You really have to have a champion on your staff. And I am lucky to have that right now as well. I'm not the number one manga shop in my town at all. The other comic shop is, and the owner of that shop, Kip Marvick, he was an anime fan before I knew what anime was when I was a little kid. You know, Robotech was the first thing I ever saw, kind of like what you're saying about Voltron. And he already knew, he'd already seen everything. He's, oh, have you seen the original Japanese Macross? And I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about, you know. So.
Yeah, know that feeling well. It's just so challenging because there's so much stuff. Somebody said further up in the comments that the sheer volume of titles that are coming out can be off-putting to people because they just walk in and they're like, where do I even start? This is insane. Well, and then if you throw manga into that mix, you're just doubling how much stuff is available for people to look at. It could be a challenge.
Or you see a manga title and you're like, okay, well, this looks kind of cool. What issue are they on? Well, they're at volume 99. Okay, I'm not going to go. I would have to read 98 other volumes to see what, to figure out what's actually going on here. So that's kind of off-putting. And I enjoy manga. I mean, I do read it. But when you see something like, there's certain titles that I'm just have no plans on reading when it comes to manga, simply because I'm just not going to spend the money to play catch up to try to figure out what's going on.
I want to thank John Rodenbiker for his recommendation here because that is information that is valuable to me. That might make me want to go back and read a couple of things. If I know what to read and I know that it's worthwhile from somebody who's been reading it, that is greatly appreciated. So thank you for that, John.
John's amazing. And when we used to do a podcast, he would come on every year and cover the Eisner books. And John's just a voracious reader. And I mean, really is, I wish that we had 100 Johns. We would be very happy.
No doubt. I know that feeling well. We all have those few people at the shop who are just huge readers of their thing, right? Or even if it's a broad spectrum. And they're always a joy to talk to because you get really good insights from them about what's going on and how it ties to something else over here and all these kind of things.
It's me. He's talking about me.
I'm talking about you. So I do have a question for you. Talking about some oddball things that comic creators sometimes decide to do. We talked about Kyle Higgins and I almost said Void Rivals, and that's not right. Radiant Black number 25.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that you had to get cover A and cover B to get 5 different pages of story at the end. And nobody really knew that much in advance that was what was happening. And then you find out that the next several issues are all doing the same thing. How do you feel about that?
I was thinking about, do you remember Fathom #1, the Michael Turner book?
Yeah.
Remember there was different content in the issues of Fathom depending on which cover you got?
I do not remember that.
I think there were 3 different, somebody might remember better than me, but I think there are 3 different issues of Fathom #1 that had different pages in them, just a few. But that was what I was thinking of with the Radiant Black thing. I think it was a fun idea. I think they were trying to do something fun. However, the execution is where I think the biggest problem came in. This maybe goes back to your Death of Superman point. Let us know, at least us, we had to know on the retailer level in order to make sure that all of our fans were taken care of. And I know how they handled issue 25, but then that created its own, backlash as well, right? Because I ordered equally to A and B. So I, as a retailer, paid for all my copies, whereas the retailers who only ordered cover A got free copies of cover B to match. Well, that wasn't very fair. So
no, I also equalized my orders,
right?
As a result, saw no benefit.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I think the idea of, I think what they want to do is cool. But I famously, so I once ran a promotion called Comic Bucks. I thought this was the greatest promotion I'd ever come up with. It was free comic book day, like 2009, and we'd been in the the recession or the economic crisis we were in as of 2008. And so my idea was I wanted to give everybody who came to free comic book day 100 individual $1 comic books. I didn't want to do 25% off cover price or whatever. I wanted to give you $1, but you could only spend $1 per book that you bought. So you could give me a comic book for a $2.99 book and pay $1.99, right? And you could do that 100 times. But it was the most convoluted, it is famous in my store for terrible promotions. And so like it's having the foresight to know when what is maybe a fun idea just can't be executed. Right. And or to anticipate a way to execute it besides for this. So I think that's the core problem, right?
Yeah, I think the lack of communication was really key there, because if they had just told us, everybody would have ordered it, and everybody would have gone on about their business, but they didn't. So it got really convoluted and messy.
Yep.
That's a shame.
We're one of those shops, we don't sell a ton of Radiant Black. I think the universe is cool. I love that the guys are working their butts off to try to make something fun, but we're not a big Radiant Black shop. So it ultimately didn't have a huge effect on me. But that's not true for everybody. There are places that book does extremely well. So
we don't sell a whole lot of it, but the people who are reading it are really, really enjoying it.
Is a great book. I mean, absolutely great book. And when you're reading it, a lot of people will say, well, this cover A, cover B, 5 different pages, it's a money grab. When you're actually reading it and you know what's going on in the story, it makes perfect sense that he's doing this. And then what's going to happen over the next 5 months, if I understand it correctly, that A and B cover is not going to be a difference of 5 pages. It's going to be it's going to be the exact same story, just from another person's perspective. And and with what's going on with that story and what he has been slowly building toward over the past pretty good while now. Honestly, if you look at it as far as the overall story is concerned, we've been working toward this point since the very first issue. So this has been like an underlying story from the very beginning, and we're finally getting to the big payoff. So what's actually going on with it makes perfect sense. And as a consumer, I'm looking forward to the next 5 months. Because at the end of the day, when this is all said and done, there's still a decision that has to be made. And for people that's reading, it's going to understand what I'm about to say. It's either Nathan or it's Marshall. It's either Nathan or Marshall. We're about to 1-800 Robin, one of them. I mean, it's just, that's all there is to it. And he's already put that vote out there, so he knows what's fixing to happen. We don't. Which makes me mad. We need to get him back on the show.
That was another great example, though. Your 1-900 Robin. You had to pay to make that phone call.
You did. I was going to point that out. I did it back in the day. So
did you vote for him to live or die?
To live. I'm a goody two shoes guy. What can I tell you? So
I normally am too, but I could not stand Jason Todd.
Oh, that's fair.
Gone so bad. It chapped me so bad when they brought him back as Red Hood. I'm like, what are you doing, guys?
He works as Red Hood though. He never truly worked as Robin, but he worked perfectly as Red Hood in New 52.
I'll be honest with you too. If they did the same thing again with Damian Wayne, I would vote the same way again. I can't stand that kid. I obviously never met him because he's fictitious, but I would like to smack him across the room. I do not like that kid at all. He chaps me. But I guess one of the things you've mentioned, there's another shop in Fargo. How big is Fargo? I don't even know.
if you take Fargo, Moorhead, and West Fargo, we're about 225,000 right now. So
Okay. That's about the size Huntsville was in the mid to late 80s, going into the 90s.
How big
And
are
now
we now?
Huntsville's the biggest city in Alabama now.
as an
Um,
example of the shops that went away, there were when I opened, I was the sixth guy in town selling new comics. So, and population was I'm sure under 200,000. I don't know the exact numbers then. So,
yeah, when we opened, we were the third. Now there had been others that had come and gone before us, but we were the third at that moment. And then within 6 months, there were seven. Everybody was opening up a comic shop right at that same time. And then for a long time, there were just two of us in town, and now there's kind of two and a half, kind of three if you count Madison.
well, I think the other interesting thing in my career is when I was young, and
I
especially
liked
because
your.
of the.
That's Alan's eyes where you could see he was counting in his head.
Well, I was
Like,
trying to
where are
figure
the
out.
comic shops he's talking about? That
Yeah,
was
I was
just really
trying to
funny.
figure out who was who. I think I got it figured out now.
When I grew up, you hated everybody else. You know, it was all them's them, we's we. And if someone shopped at the other shop, you hated them for doing it, and all that. You know, and it took me a long time to shake all that mentality of uh, there's plenty for everybody. And the reality is, if the market is growing, we want more comic shops in our markets, right? Because that's how we're getting new readers and building this thing that we love. I mean, I don't know about you. I am not here because I'm trying to retire with $20 million.
If that were my goal, I am failing miserably.
Right. Yeah. We're all failing to some degree or another for sure. So
Yeah, yeah. What I wouldn't give, but no, I enjoy comics. I enjoy the community that we have at the shop. We got some amazing people, and I'm sure that you're in a similar boat, right? You've got awesome people who just your store is their second home.
and we just had so we did our two versions of our 30th anniversary event, but we did our true 30th anniversary, the day we actually opened, landed on a Wednesday, and coincidentally it was the Wednesday Void Rivals release, so it all worked out just beautifully.
Oh
But
man,
yeah, it was great. It was a lot of fun. But I had a guy down. He the first month I was open, I got 4 previews in, and one of those guys is still around to the day. So I, essentially crowned him my longest running customer. We had a ton of fun with that. So
how awesome is that? Good for you and good for him.
right?
That is fantastic. I will say some of our earliest customers, Andy Price and Lamar Chaplin. Andy Price was the artist on all the My Little Pony books there for the longest time, if that name rings a bell for you. Um, but they came over from another shop to come to our shop, and they wanted to keep their old box numbers, though. So some of my first subscribers, I had like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 69, and 77.
Yep.
That was like, man, you guys had to be a pain in the butt, didn't you? But to this day, Lamar Chaplin still box number 77, 22 years later.
Yeah, no, and I've got a couple of guys like that, but that makes me think of, it's cool that you have multiple creators. We have, I mean, up here in Fargo, we don't have famous people here.
Oh, they've all
It's
moved away from here. They don't live here anymore. Cully
it's like,
Hamner moved from here. Jason Aaron moved from here. Andy Price moved from here. They get a name and then they leave.
What was Matt? Was it Matt Ryan? Was that
Matt
his
Ryan's
name?
the quarterback, or was the quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons.
Now, what was the guy that? What was his? It was Matt something. He went to Butler High School, ended up drawing X-Men, inking and stuff. Yeah, this was back in the '90s. Crap, y'all gonna make me start making phone
I know
calls.
Nate Massengill did Deadpool, and he did some X-Men stuff. The only
That's
guy
not
who's famous at all here locally, and he's still making a name for himself, but he's well on his way to doing it, is Mark Spears. He did that recent King Spawn cover where it was just like him in the suit, but he had the totally messed up face and all that stuff.
Cool.
But yeah, he did that. He did a few others, but he's got some stuff in the works that is going to be awesome.
I'm famous for.
We're gonna find out who it was.
I'm famous for missing when celebrities come through the shop. Just last week, I stepped out for literally 40 minutes or so. And no kidding, while I was out, this is absolutely true. A guy comes in and he's looking for, he asked the guys if we had any John Romita Jr. stuff. And it's like, well, yeah, of course we do. And he said, oh, I'm John Romita Jr.'s stepson. I kid you not. And so he found a few things he didn't have, and that was really cool. And I come back, and everybody's like, you won't believe what just happened. But then about 15 years ago, Patton Oswalt was in town for a comedy show, and I was out of town. And, of course, Patton Oswalt comes into the shop, and he's got his list of comics for the week, looking for them. And we didn't have everything on the rack, but the guys literally – stole comics out of subscriber boxes to fill Patton Oswalt's list. So,
my favorite one is the Thursday before the Huntsville Pop Culture Expo.
Oh, this was pretty great. Yeah.
I go up to Haven because I was going to help Josh carry stuff over to the expo for load in, and I don't get 5 feet inside the door. And Josh comes walking out of the back room and is looking like the cat that just ate the canary, is grinning from ear to ear, and his feet are damn near not even touching the ground. He's floating, and he's like, Nathan Zerdy's in my back room right now drawing.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So that was one of my favorite ones.
Yeah, Nathan Zerdy ended up hanging out at the shop for a couple of hours, just sitting in the back room drawing, looking for back issues he was missing, and chatting with us. Because he was there for the show, and he said he likes to get there early to wherever town he's doing a show, and he likes to get there early and go visit the local shops. But he hung out with us for a few hours, and it was awesome.
Our two most famous ones. I mean, I've met a ton of people now, but like first people, I'm like 25 years old, and there's a Diamond Comics Summit in Minneapolis, so we get down for that, and Chris Claremont's there. Because I had no idea. I didn't know they brought guests along. And I'm like 25, and Chris Claremont's my idol. I've had a shop for like 2 years and all this stuff. And so by sheer chance, we end up sitting down at the table. He comes over and sits at our table for lunch. And it was kind of because we didn't know anybody. So we sat at just me and the person I came with, sat at a table by ourselves. So Chris came over because there was nowhere else to sit. And he puts his tray down and he looks at us and he goes, so what do you think of this X-Men crap without me now? And I can't say anything. I can't even open my mouth. What am I going to say to Chris Claremont? And so he's talking away because it's Chris. And all of a sudden he stops and he stands up and he yells out, Squire, at the top of his lungs. And freaking Neil Gaiman walks into the room, or has walked into the room, and comes over and sits down with us at the same table. So I'm having lunch with Chris Claremont and Neil Gaiman.
Oh, man.
I mean, people pay for this, right?
Out the nose.
Yeah.
Did you remind Chris Claremont of that when you had him up?
I did. He doesn't remember at all. Funny enough, though, the person I was with has met Neil Gaiman a couple times, and Neil Gaiman remembers it. But Chris doesn't remember it the other way. So
how funny is that? That's incredible.
Yeah.
I will tell you, you talk about not being there when somebody walks into the shop. I was out one time and I get a call. You'll appreciate this, Alan. This was from Alex. Alex calls me up. He says, hey, do we have any copies of this book called Shaman's Tears? We got somebody looking for copies of number 1. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely, we do. I had just got them in a collection, and I hadn't put them out on the floor yet. So I told them where they were and where to get them. And I was a little bit curious, and I'm like, well, who's looking for that book? Because that's an obscure book for people to be looking for, right? And I was thinking, what else can I sell this guy? Because I know if somebody likes Shaman's Tears, I know other things I could point him to. And he goes, Alex being Alex, he turns and he goes, sir, what's your name? And he says, Mike Grell. And Alex is like, I mean, his brain just short-circuited.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm sitting here like, I'm not there. Why am I not there? Was dying. but he signed every other copy of Shaman's Tears that we had and left them at the shop. But it was just nuts. I'm like, man, Mike Grell walks into my store and I'm not there. I could shoot myself right now.
Awesome. Well, not awesome, but awesome.
That guy that went to Butler that worked on X-Men, his name was Matt Ryan. He's worked on X-Men, Batman. He's worked for both companies, and now he's just like freelance. But he started out in '93.
I wish that is not ringing any bells for me, and that makes me feel terrible.
I ended up texting a buddy of mine that went to high school with him. Oh, well, now he's like he's worked on Spider-Man 2099, Young Avengers. He worked at CrossGen for a while, doing CrossGen.
Huh.
I know you really can't see, but
so that actually is a good question, Rich. Over the years, all these things that have come out, he must have been an inker.
He's like inker and cover artist.
Yeah. Okay. All these various universes that have come and gone. Are there any that resonated with you particularly well?
Oh, well, you got to, I'm old, so in what is it, 86 when Marvel's new universe was coming out. Oh, yeah. I mean, I bought everything because, again, I'm a kid. I'm like 16, and so this whole idea that I can buy all these new number ones and get into this universe, and I mean, I collected a lot more of those comics than deserved to be collected. So,
Spitfire was my favorite one of those.
Spitfire was fun. Yeah, I loved Cyforce. Yeah, DP7 and remember Jim Shooter and John Romita Jr. did Starbrand together.
Yes.
So, yep. So,
yeah, I liked the new universe pretty well. I certainly didn't hate it like a lot of people did, but that came out right there on the heels of New Coke, the new Coca-Cola, and I think people were just like, "What are you doing? You can't mess with everything. No, thank you." I have found it interesting that they've been able to revive or keep pieces of the new universe alive, Starbrand particularly. Mm-hmm. I have found that interesting that their use of that Jason Aaron's Avengers 1 million BC or whatever it is, where it's not Hulk, it's the Starbrand, right? And I've thought that was an interesting thing to do to keep that alive. But I was a big fan of the Ultraverse, the Malibu Ultraverse, when that came out. That was just hitting on all cylinders for me. Even books that I looked at and said, well, that's a dumb looking book. I'm not going to be interested in that. And then I read it, and son of a gun if I didn't love it, like Hard Case. I loved Hard Case. I had no business. Like, that was supposed to be stupid. But Strangers was great. Nightman was awesome. I loved Solitaire. I loved Prototype. I loved Mantra. I loved all of it. It was great. I was on board. That was my.
Well, you were a glutton for punishment there on. Getting your universes destroyed.
Oh yeah, Sludge was great. That was my introduction to Aaron Lopresti's artwork. Was Sludge. I really loved that. I loved Valiant back in the day. Valiant was excellent.
Yeah, early Valiant was terrific. That was another one that was going to be my other answer. But it's just, it's often your first love, though. It's the first time it happens. I remember when, like New Mutants, I bought the New Mutants graphic novel. I had to save up to get that and buying New Mutants #1. That was my, those were my mutants because X-Men was already out, but I got to start there. So I still, to the day, my fondness for those characters is really intense. So that was, I lied. I asked Chris Claremont one more question. My other question was, I'll never forget getting New Mutants 55, and it's by Chris Claremont, and then issue 56 is not by Chris Claremont. It's by Louise Simonson. And at the time, it was like, oh, he must just be taking a break for an issue, but he was gone. He'd left. And again, we had no way to know those things back then. So I wanted to know why he left that book. And he said he loved the New Mutants, are some of his absolute most precious characters, but he said he had too many titles to write. He had to give something up. He had no choice, and that was what he gave up. So,
so that actually reminds me, we've got Louise Simonson is writing a book right now. One of those mini X-Men miniseries is a Louise Simonson book. We've got Ann Nesenti is back writing books. We've got Dave Michelinie back writing books. I don't know what the rationale is for that. I don't know why they're bringing these old creators back, but I'm loving it. It's making me really happy to see those names again on those. And I tell you, I'm subscribed myself to read books that I wouldn't otherwise read because of who's writing them. Do you get any of that? Does that happen to you too?
Yeah, well, like when I saw Avengers: War Across Time, where we're getting Paul Levitz writing an Avengers comic with Alan Davis art, that was like,
Yeah, you
yeah,
can't beat that. What a team!
no, you can't. And I just and I was really frustrated with that title, as I am with a lot of these titles, because I feel like these are great ideas marketed to no one. It's up to you and me to make anything of these, and that's one thing I'm extremely frustrated with, is the lack of marketing. But again, I finally realized it's the same problem everywhere, and it goes to the big issues in Hollywood. Nobody's spending advertising dollars, so of course Marvel Comics is not going to be not going to be spending advertising dollars. But I just think it's a missed opportunity that we've got, where we're getting these things that I know people would enjoy, but I just don't have an audience to get them to, because those people don't know they're happening. So
we had kind of talked about manga earlier, and then we've been talking about independent comics, and I don't know what just made me think of it. I had to start digging through my email. Once again, two different shop owners, two different markets. And I don't know how well they do up there, but Mad Cave Studios is now partnering with Tatsumoto Production, and they are going to publish the Gotcha Man comics, or Battle of the Planets, depending on how old you are.
Right.
What do how do y'all market something like that? I mean, because you've got two different crowds you can go after. You've got the older crowd that remembers it as Gotcha Man Battle of the Planets, or just Battle of the Planets is what I grew up with. But then you also have a newer generation with manga, and this isn't going to be manga, it's going to be more comic format. But, how do y'all sell that as store owners?
I think a book like that will mostly be, I know. Well, let's take Star Trek as an example. Like, I'm passionate about this Star Trek run. I built all of like 12 subscribers, which is a good number. Don't get me wrong, right? But I mean, I look at that, and then I look at Battle of the Planets, and I think, well, how many people are going to buy this, right? It won't be 12. You know what I mean? And so mostly I would probably, for me up here, I'd probably let it sort of take care of itself. You may have a different approach, but that would be, in a specific case like that, that's what I would do. So
now I'd say that that's about exactly the same approach that I would take to that. I've got folks that I know will be interested, and I have folks I know will buy it, and those are not necessarily the same thing, right?
Right.
So I will order somewhere in between those two numbers and see how it sells.
Yeah, I can think of a couple of customers immediately who are like, they're making this for the two guys that I just thought of in my head, right? So.
Right.
Well, it does say it's not coming out until like 2024, but they're not saying when. So, Nick, I'm about to sign you up for a comic coming out in 2024.
It will touch on, I mean, those types of things are touching on a good piece of nostalgia. I mean, I'm going to tell you my Marvel theory. And I'm always hesitant to well, yeah, I mean, I'll tell you my Marvel theory. So you mentioned how many miniseries there are, and then you're talking about this sort of nostalgia vibe that's going through the companies. I think especially, I mean, I really think this is true because it's Marvel and DC. I just think in that corporate world that there are trends that the buyers of graphic novels are saying, in 2023, these are the things we want to buy. In 2024 and 2020, this is what we want right now. We want books about these things. And I think that, sad as it is, I think in a lot of cases, Marvel is making the single issues to make a trade that fits into, what the buyers of graphic novels want, right? Yep. And so that's why you see the content you want. I know this is not, like, it's not really that interesting if you just want to read, good Marvel comics, but I do think if I see a lot of 3-issue minis, then there's some reason that they are trying to pump out those trades. Maybe they've been told to get their volume up. I mean, I have no idea, right? Unfortunately, I don't think in a lot of cases it's about us as the comic readers, but at the same time, that doesn't mean that they're all bad at all. And having a lot of comics, the good thing about that, as I was told years ago by Stuart Schreck at DC, was you've got to be able to try out new talent. You've got to have vehicles for people who aren't writing and drawing comics now to get a chance to write and draw comics. So that's another advantage to all those graphic novels. But yeah, I mean, that's the way that I'm seeing things currently, and so I'm guessing nostalgia is something that they're saying that they want at Barnes and Noble and Amazon and things like that. So
now you just mentioned a name. I think you and I are probably the only people on this call that would recognize Stuart Schreck. And that leaves me with one question: do you celebrate Shrektober every year?
Oh, I absolutely celebrate Shrektober. Of course I do.
Me too. He's a good dude.
He's a great dude. Yep.
Yeah.
It took me forever to meet him in person, but he had the DC Black credit card and took us out for a barbecue. We went to a crazy barbecue place in Chicago with the guy from like Planet Comics, and it was like a big time British retailer and some other people. We did not belong there, but it was a ton of fun. So
that's awesome. You can't beat that. And what you just said, we did not belong there, and you kind of alluded earlier to something. I had Eric Hitchcock, who was our diamond guy for years. Still is technically, I guess, although we're ordering a lot from other distributors now. But Eric, one time, I said something kind of like that, like, we didn't belong at this thing, and he goes, "You've been in business for 15 years. You are a real store." And that's the first time it really clicked with me that I was like, we are a real store. I guess I should act like it. Because before I'm like, you know what? I'll take the back seat. I'll let the other folks have their say. I'll let them do this or I'll do that. I'm not going to make waves. I'm not going to raise a stink. And I've changed my behavior since then to say, you know what? If something's not right, I'm going to call somebody on it. Not in a mean-spirited way. But I'm not going to just stand here and take it. I'm going to make my voice heard so that I can at least do my part to prevent this kind of thing from happening again. When they do things like that are boneheaded or what have you. But that was the first time anybody had ever said anything like that to me, and it clicked. It really did.
That's been. I had the first time I went to Comics Pro. I think it was 2018, and they were doing these brainstorming sessions. They had a list of, I think it was 4 problems that people had voted on and decided these are the things we want to talk about at the convention. And they broke us up into retailer groups. And we were supposed to, our group got, I don't even remember what problem. I literally don't remember what the problem was. It's not that important, but we attacked it as a group and we talked about it. And I'm kind of like exchanging ideas like toe to toe with this one other retailer. And afterwards, my employee was with me said, "Do you know who that was?" And I said, "No, I have no idea." He said, "That was Brian Hibbs." And I'm like, and Brian Hibbs has respected me ever since. And I'm like, all of North Dakota represents 0.02% of sales in the comic book industry, and I mean, that is part of it. The reality, I mean, the amount you sell is part of your voice, right? Because they're not going to listen to 0.02% of the industry. But that was awesome. That was just an awesome, awesome morning. I had such a great time. So
I've been trying to get out to Comics Pro, and it's just, if something happens every year, I haven't been able to do it. Would you recommend it as something to go to?
Yeah, if you haven't done it, it is the all industry conferences have their drawbacks because they can kind of be the cool kids all hang out together. And I definitely am not a cool kid, so I'm never in that group or whatever. So there's always an element of that. But the thing that Comics Pro does so well is it's the only one. It brings everybody together. There's one of the big things about it is the roundtable segment. So they'll have 50, 60, 70 vendors, and they'll all pay for these tables. That's how they fund the convention. But then we get broken up into groups of 3 or 4 people. And so we'll go to every roundtable and we'll get an individual presentation. And it'll be everybody from Attaboy to Marvel to Zenoscope. It doesn't matter. It's, whoever's bought tables. and it's an awesome experience. You can kind of tell the cool kids don't all do the tables; they're off having the real meetings, but that's great. And then you get the vendor presentations over lunch and all that kind of stuff, and then there'll be parties at night. But yes, I think it's a very important thing to do at least once, and I'm a big advocate for trying to grow Comics Pro for sure. So. A lot of really good people at the top of that organization, and they are actually responsible for a lot of positive things that happen, even if we don't always see them. So,
Well,
actually, no, I'll give you a specific example of something they just did. When Image announced that they were moving over to Lunar, they announced that they were going to have their new comic book day was going to be Tuesday, along with DC. So, Image changed course. So.
You just disappeared for a second, but you came back really quick.
Oh, sorry. But Image changed course and decided to keep their new comics on Wednesdays, and that was directly because of Jen Haynes' work at Comics Pro. So
that's a result I 100% get behind.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So the board, they do matter, and the more we could grow them, the more that they would matter. So.
Well, I would. I've been meaning to for the past several years, the past 5 years probably, been trying to get out there and get involved, and I just haven't been able to do it. Every year is some different reason, and it feels like some things are conspiring to keep me away. But I fully intend to go this coming year, and so hopefully I look forward to seeing you there.
I missed this year because we were getting ready for FCBD, but I'm going to go to. I'm going to pick at least one thing to go to in 2024, and I know that I'm going to go to Comics Pro. So,
you speak of Free Comic Book Day. You had Chris Claremont out this year, and that's a big deal to get a guest of that magnitude to do all the logistics and organization and all that stuff.
Yep.
Did that have the impact that you wanted it to have? How did that go?
Yeah, it's a yes and no. I mean, absolutely it did. We created a memory that people will never forget, and learned so much about it. When we did it, when we took it on, we didn't know what we were doing. We were not, at the beginning, we weren't ready or going to be able to do it. And that was a great thing for us to do, to challenge ourselves to do something that we didn't know how to do, right? And that was bigger than we were when we started off. And the day was awesome. I mean, Chris is just, you've met Chris. We've talked about this. I mean, it's ridiculous. He's worth every penny to have there. That said, we learned a lot of things logistically about having someone like Chris who could spend 5 to 10 minutes talking to everybody in a line that was constantly at about 200 people, right? Yep. And things like that. So there were things we could have anticipated and done a little differently, but it was okay. This time for us, because no one like that had ever been here, it was fine. I wouldn't want it to happen again the exact way that it happened, but this time we absolutely got away with it. Nobody minded waiting, because everybody when you get Chris's attention, you're the whole universe. It's just absolutely amazing to watch. So people were fine waiting, right? But I wouldn't, if we had him wait again, it wouldn't work. So
do you think that you'll do something like that again? Are you already thinking that way for next year?
Not for next year. It is something we would do it again, but we would do it. I think for where we are and for the financial situation that is involved with it. And Chris is pretty friendly. He has a good deal, honestly. But at the end of the day, we put so much work and time into it that we didn't hit as well on numbers as we wanted to on our back end of it. I wouldn't not have done it. Don't get me wrong, but just the reality. And again, it was all learning experience, including the aftermath. Right. But we learned so much because we learned, to us, it was Free Comic Book Day starring Chris Claremont. No, it was Chris Claremont and everything else pushed to the side. Right. That's why people came. People came to get in line and get signatures. That also meant that was where they were spending their dollars. And so all of the inventory we built up and all those sorts of things, and even the free comics, nothing quite performed like kind of the way we thought that it would, if that makes sense. So we just learned a lot about that, and in the future we would handle it all differently, and because of everything that we learned. Great example. I was going to joke earlier. My highest ordered Marvel comic of the last year was Extreme X-Men #1. I ordered 600 copies of that book because I wanted to make sure that whoever showed up had something to get. It was the only thing that I could get that they absolutely would be able to. I don't, but everybody brought their own books. I probably didn't need 100 of them. So I'm talking about, this is going to be on my free comic book day table next year for sure. So, I mean, but I felt like we needed to do that. The last thing we wanted would have been at 2:30 in the afternoon to have been out of things that had Chris Claremont's name on it for people to get signed, right? That would have been terrible. So
absolutely.
It is what it is. So
no, I would have probably made that exact same decision on ordering.
Yep.
Because I was raised Baptist, right? So it's the same thing with food. You'd rather have too much than not enough. I would not want anybody. I wouldn't want a single person walking out of there they couldn't get a Chris Claremont book to get signed because I ran out. I would feel terrible for the rest of my life.
Trust me, it's the same up here with Lutherans. So we understand.
So I guess first of all, congratulations, Dana. You did make it. Awesome. Here we are. We're still going.
Oh, Dana. Awesome. Hi, Dana.
So I just got back a few books from CGC, and I thought we'd show them off if you guys want to see what we got in.
Ooh.
What do you say?
Ooh.
You up for that, Richard?
Sure.
All right. Let's see what we got here. It's a weird mix, people. It's a very, very weird mix. I'm not gonna lie.
Is this literally an unboxing we're doing? All right.
I already took them out of the box because CGC had them for so long. I didn't know what was in there. I was like, "What the heck have I got?" It was like Christmas. It really was. It was like Christmas for me. But first up, we got a Fantastic Four number 50 in low grade. But it's a Fantastic Four number 50. So your third appearance of Silver Surfer. And I just sent off another copy of it the other day along with the 48 and 49. So we got us a Fantastic Four number 50. That's going to be going up on the shelf tomorrow. And that's exciting. That makes me happy. Here's a kind of an oddball book, but you know what? We're kind of an oddball people. This one, Avengers number 59. It's your first Hank Pym as Yellow Jacket.
That's a good looking copy.
It is. It presents better than a 6.5. I will say that. But yes, this also has a letter in it, which I find interesting because I didn't really know this. But this book has got a letter in it from Wendy Pini, the creator of ElfQuest. Or co-creator of ElfQuest. She's got a letter in the back. But yeah, we got an Avengers number 59. Again, that'll be on the wall at the shop tomorrow. This one's a fun one. It's one of those ones people don't ask for a whole lot, but yet here it is. And you don't think about it a whole lot. Hulk 141, your first appearance of Doc Samson. You got it, Nick. I will do that. But yeah, there's your first appearance of Doc Samson right there. Fun book. Low grade. Again, none of these are real high grade, but they're fun books. This one I honestly only got graded because this cover is so pretty. I wanted to preserve it. Good financial decision? Probably not. But it's a beautiful book. And that would be Lone Ranger number 82. Look at that cover.
That is cool looking.
It's one of those good old school painted covers, and it's glorious. I love it. But that is a highly reflective book. That's rough.
No, I think that was a good move getting something like that graded.
It's such a
not
beautiful book.
Not necessarily for the grade, but for the preserving it aspect of it.
Now this one, kind of the same thing. Kind of got this one graded for the same reason. Not a high dollar book by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a good solid copy, and I wanted to preserve it. And that one, I think you and Bill Fisher will be the only people who care about this one besides me.
Oh, nice.
Walt Disney's Vacation in Disneyland, celebrating the 10th anniversary of Disneyland. I love any book that has the attractions at the theme parks. I think that's great. And so you've got the Skyway here, and that's pretty awesome. The back cover on this one is what's really astounding, though. Look at that.
Now, is that going up at the shop?
Still debating that one, if I'm honest.
Do what?
I'm still debating that, if I'm honest, but probably. But isn't that gorgeous? Look at that. That's just fun to look at.
Yeah.
You could display this one front ways or back ways, and you got a great book. And now this last one, this is the real reason. When I got these back, I remember this is the real reason that I sent this batch of books off to be graded anyway. Batman number 53.
Nice.
That's got an early Joker appearance.
From what I can tell through the glare, that one looks like that presents well also.
It does. Yeah, it does very well. But yeah, that's a good Joker appearance. And I like warning from Batman. That's what the red box there says. But yeah, Batman number 53. I always like getting a good double-digit Batman book. I've only got one single-digit Batman book. I would love to get more. But yeah, so that's just my little box of goodies that I got. Nick, I will definitely let you know on that FF number 50 for sure. But yeah, those are good books. See, you can't go wrong. That old Disney cover is gorgeous. What a gorgeous book. Good stuff. But those are the kind of things that they make me happy. So I can't help myself. I like to preserve some of these kind of books because they're not going to get any. Their condition's not going to improve any. So I like to lock them in where they are. You know what I mean? Do you guys do a lot of sales of CGC books, or are you mostly a raw book kind of store?
Oh, we send plenty of stuff in. You got some. Do you typically get collections with that much good stuff in it?
Oh no, these aren't. No, no, definitely not. The vast majority of collections we get these days have started to shift from being all early to mid 90s books to being lots of early to mid 2000s books.
Oh yeah, yep. Lots of Ultimate runs.
Yes, lots and lots of Ultimate runs. A lot of the collections that we're seeing these days have that. My favorite is when people call and say, "What kind of books are you looking for?" And I say, generally, we're looking at anything, but we get real excited about stuff 80s and earlier. And they're like, "Oh, good! I've got this whole collection from the 80s," and they bring it in, and it's all 2007.
Right.
Yeah. I know it doesn't feel like it was 40 years ago, but it really was. It was not just 15 years ago. Come on, guys.
People definitely have trouble knowing their years and also like estimating how many books they have, is another fun one. So
my favorite is they're still in the original plastic.
Oh, I love that line.
Like, they didn't come in plastic.
Yeah.
Yep. You see how those are sitting on the shelf over there? That's how they show up. They do not come in their original plastic.
Yeah.
Always makes me laugh.
Yep. But yeah, we definitely CGC books. I find it's really hard to sell CGC books locally. It is felt to me, and maybe your experience is different, like people want to buy the book out of your boxes and then go get it CGC. That's what, they would love to do that. But they aren't as fond of wanting to, buy it already graded. Right. So
I've certainly seen that the sales on CGC graded books are cyclical. And I see a big bump every year shortly before our big local show, which is the Huntsville Comic and Pop Culture Expo, which is phenomenal. But the month or so before that show, I see a big bump in the sales of our graded books. Because people come in and they're like, I've been wanting to get this for a while, but I just can't pull the trigger. And I know if you put that up on the wall at the show that I'm going to lose that book. So I'm going to go ahead and buy it now.
Sure.
And I see that bump is pretty consistent every year on our graded stuff. And then, of course,
We
in
need to.
2021, we just sold graded books like candy.
Well, yes, yeah.
That was a lovely time.
I joked with people. I said, "You guys don't." I mean, I think I had 4 copies in a 12-month period. I had 4 copies of Hulk 181 come through, and like 5 copies of Giant Size X-Men one. I said, you realize we haven't had 4 copies in the 27 previous years we've been open of these books, right? So
Yeah, I think I've only ever had 3 copies of Hulk 181 come through that the person actually ended up selling.
yeah, it was really strange. It was just, not only were they worth a lot, everybody was looking to sell them, and you were buying collections left and right. We're still processing collections from early 2022 that there were just so many of them. So
Yep. So what's
but now
the
it's slowed
single
down. We
biggest
aren't.
comic you've ever had come through your door in a collection somebody was trying to sell?
Oh, we really don't have. I bought I own an X-Men #1 that I bought from a customer. That's my collection, is X-Men 1 through 280. And I'm complete.
Oh, that's a good run right there.
Yep.
That's
I'm
solid.
complete. I'm complete giant size up. I've had a 1 and a 2 for a while. I just in the last few months got a X-Men 4 walked in, and I got a 3.5 from CGC on it. So I was really happy with that. And I'm missing probably 40 books between 1 and 94 is all I need. So when I go to shops, when I go around, I go to shops. That's what I'm digging for, is X-Men under 100. So, but I've got a
it's funny you mentioned that, because I just got this in yesterday.
Uh-oh. What?
I just got that yesterday.
I'll check my list.
Let me know if you need it.
I will. That's the only list I keep, is my X-Men list. That's the only one. The best book we ever had, though, is, and I own it, is an AF-15, Amazing Fantasy 15, but it's a 0.5, so it's very exciting. It's kind of funny. The cover's there and not in bad shape, but it's just attached, right? So it's a 0.5. So
I tell you, I'll tell you one of the best books we ever had come through, and I couldn't afford it. It was too big. It was absolutely too big. But I pointed them to the right person who could buy it. And we had a Fantastic Four #1 that walked through the door.
Sure.
And it came back a CGC 6.0.
Oh,
no, sorry,
geez.
6.5. 6.5. Came back a 6.5. So that was a high dollar book. And I didn't have the money.
I got a sneaking suspicion I know who owns that book for some reason.
Yeah, I think you do. But holy smokes, it was fantastic. Now, one of the weirdest books I ever had come through, and I kept it on the shelf forever at a ridiculous price. I don't know if you ever price books that way. Like, I will sell it, but I don't want to sell it. So I have my I don't want to sell it price on it. And I only didn't want to sell this book because it was such a weird anomaly, and it was such a conversation starter. Somebody had taken an Amazing Spider-Man #18 that the cover had come apart, and they had married a different comic book back cover to it.
Weird.
Right. And then they had it signed by somebody who had nothing to do with Amazing Spider-Man 18. They had Jim Shooter sign it.
Oh, that's really bizarre.
So it had a yellow label, but it was a 0.3 grade, which I didn't even know they did.
I didn't know they did. Yeah, I wouldn't have known that either.
I had no idea. So I had a 0.3 grade with a yellow label signed by a guy who had nothing to do with the book, and it had the wrong back cover. It was just such a bizarre confluence of events that led to this thing being in this CGC case that I just didn't want to sell it, because it was, everybody asked about it. Like, what is that? And we had a lot of conversations, and I still kind of regret selling it. But But the guy who sold it, he told me he gets the exact same thing out of it. He said every time I go anywhere and set up at a show and say, hey, I won't sell this book, but everybody wants to talk about it. Just absolutely crazy. But that book came in and I couldn't help it. I had to buy it.
I just recently got back a Silver Surfer #1, and it came back better than I thought. It came back a 7.0, which was like, I thought if we got lucky, we could get a 7.0. I was sure it was a 6, but you know what it's in those ranges, right? And so we were really happy with that. But here's what was bizarre. On the inside, on the first page, it's signed by Stan Lee. Not on the cover, but on the first page.
The way they used to do it, yeah.
Yep. So I noticed that there's no acknowledgement anywhere that it's signed, and I typed the the number in to get the grading notes. Not a mention of it being signed, and I realized that CGC did not pay any attention to the signature there, and I'm just baffled. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. So.
I don't know. I might send that to CBCS and get that authenticated signature on there and get that yellow label.
Right, and I didn't have a certificate of authenticity, but they've got those signatures. I'm sure it was Stanley's signature, right? And I know
we've
that
seen
they
enough
can
of those
verify
to know, right?
this. Yep. Yeah, exactly. So it's just so bizarre. I don't know what to do with it at all. I'm very confused. So.
That's an awesome pickup, though.
Yeah, it's a sweet book. So, and in really nice shape, presents extremely well. So,
I had totally forgotten until I had I dug it out of my boxes because a friend was talking about it. But my Amazing Spider-Man 298, I just happened to get because I was reading Spider-Man. I didn't know it was a big deal. I didn't know who this Todd McFarlane guy was. But I got that book. I lived in England at the time. I had to get it from the PX at the local Air Force base. But I got that book, and years later, I had a friend who was going to a convention, and Todd McFarlane was going to be there, and I forgot I had sent that book with him to get signed. So I had opened that book up just out of nostalgia's sake, and I opened it up, and there's Todd McFarlane's signature at the bottom of the front page. And I'm like, oh, man. And then it just came flooding back. I had totally forgotten about it. But that came flooding back, just the memory of that. And so now every time I get an old book and I open it up and I see that signature in there, we had a book come through not too long ago that had Jack Kirby's signature on the inside front page. It's just like, man, that's the real old school stuff, is when they signed that front page instead of on the cover, because that's just how it used to be.
Gentlemen, I'm going to have to go.
No, we stayed on longer than normal.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Like, I would talk to you all night, but yeah, my wife is just texting to see when because I never ate dinner. I'm so dedicated.
Oh, no.
Look at that. Look at how dedicated I am.
You are. Well, I tell you, brother, it has been an absolute pleasure talking with you. And maybe we'll get an opportunity to do it again sometime. If not, I look forward to seeing you at Comics Pro.
Yeah, you guys are great. I love what you're doing. You guys are terrific. So thank you.
Well, anytime you want to talk comics, you're always welcome to come back. We'd love to have you on.
Oh, don't say that. No, because my wife, no, I'm kidding. So, all right, dudes. Thank you very much.
Have a good one. Thanks for
you have a great night. And tell your wife we said thank you for letting you come out and play.
I will.
All right. Thank you, sir. You have a good one.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, Dana, we're glad you were able to pop on, too. Thank you so much for joining us. For anybody who's not normally a viewer on the show, we release shorts every single day on our YouTube channel. It's just a 1 minute or less, and it's usually just a focus on a cool comic, a cool statue, whatever, with some rockin' music, because Alan picks out awesome music for every one of these. We do that every day. We have a great time with it. We release Alan's pull list every single week, saying what we're reading right now and what we're excited about. So if you just want to hear what somebody's reading comic-wise, that's always great. And that's usually released on Friday mornings or Thursday mornings, Friday mornings.
That's actually what I've been over here kind of working on the side and it'll be released at about 11:15 in the morning. And I will literally cover just about everything that's in this storefolio. The videos are normally only about 20 to 30 minutes long. I do kind of try to move fast because nobody's got time to watch a 2-hour video just talking, about comic book reviews. One thing that I do want to throw out there for the new subscribers that may be watching this, thank you so much. We're literally 6 subscribers away on YouTube from having 500 subscribers. So if you're watching on Facebook, if you jump over to YouTube and hit the subscribe button, that would be awesome because we're literally 6 away now from 500 subs.
And when we hit 500, we promised ourselves that we're going to go get a pizza from a local pizza joint that we both love. And so we're really anxious to get to 500 because we've been not getting that pizza for a long time. And we got to go get that Sticky Fingers pizza because that's the good stuff.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that next Thursday night on the live stream, we're sitting here eating pizza.
Oh, man, that would be awesome. That would make me very happy. But yes, everybody who tuned in tonight, thank you so much. If you're watching later after the fact when you should be at work, both shame on you and thank you so much. We're really glad that you're doing that. We certainly appreciate it, and we look forward to talking with you guys more next week. Anything you want to say before we tune out to let everybody go home?
How did that saying go? We don't quit playing because we grow up. We grow up because we quit playing.
Oh, you're going to dispense advice here at the end of the show. Got it. A life philosophy. I wasn't expecting that.
I just threw something random out there for the new people. They need to think that we at least know what we're doing on this show.
Oh, if they've watched it, they already know the truth that we don't. But yes, that is awesome. And we will use one of our old sign-offs here as our way of ending the show tonight. So here we go.